All right, let's now look at HTML forms, especially the essential kind of concept and basics. So after this presentation, you'll be able to create an HTML form, and also you'll appreciate the two most common things that go inside the form. These are the different tags and attributes we're going to look at. So first thing is basic concepts. So we have a web page. The web page is shown in a browser. Inside the web page is, for this example, a form, an HTML form. All right, so how does the user use it? Well, it types in some things and presses some buttons and chooses a few things and finally presses submit. That data that they typed in goes off to the server. The server gives it to a program on the server, and then that program does, who knows, anything. Maybe it saves the data into a database, perhaps it sends an email, lots of different things a server program can do. Usually it outputs a little web page and says, thank you very much for logging in to our website, or something like that. So that's the basic idea. The key point is the data sent from the browser to the server is just the data that is selected by the user. That's the basic idea. How do we do it? Well, inside our HTML, inside the body part, as usual, we construct a form. There's the start, there's the end. Inside the form, we have all the different elements that we want, whatever it is. Type in some text, choose some numbers, whatever it is. And you're going to have a submit form, usually. That means the button, you press submit, and it will send all the data over to the server. Up here, you have to tell the browser, when you press submit, where is the data going to be sent to. All right? So you have to put it here. You have to say, probably you say the exact server, maybe the directory, and so on. We'll look at this a bit later. That's where the data is going to be sent. There's another piece of data you have to tell the browser. How do you send the data? There's two methods, get method, post method. And we're going to look at that a bit later. So in general, that's the structure of our form. Destination, we talked about it briefly. Here's an example. So this is the start tag form, and there's a complete example. Everything that is chosen, selected, entered in the form, whatever it is, sent to this particular program. So I just made up this example. There's the server, there's a subdirectory on the server, and there's the exact program on that directory on that server. All right? So that's where all the data will be sent. Now, if you think about it, your user is looking at a web page and is using a form inside the web page. That web page came from somewhere. That web page came from a particular directory. Now, probably there's a very high chance that the web page comes from the same place that the data will be sent to. It's not essential, but there's a fair likelihood that the HTML and the PHP come from the same server. Now, if they come from the same server, then you do not need to write the server all over again, right here. You don't need to. It will automatically be sent to the same server, okay? Now, possibly the HTML program and the PHP program are in the same directory on that server. Okay, if that's true, then you don't even need to write directory name or server name. You just write the program name, and it will give all the data to that program in the same directory as the HTML file. Now, what about get or post? So we'll look at this a bit more detail later in other videos, but very briefly, method is get. That is the default method. So if you don't write anything at all, it will use the get method. And so just a quick example, let's try something out. Let's use a server like this, bing.com, and see what happens when we search for something like cats. All right, so I'm going to try this out. Over to my browser, and then do a bit of searching using bing.com. And let's search for something. Let's search for cats, okay? Using a particular search engine, bing.com from Microsoft. Let's search for cats. And it goes off to their server and it says, somebody has typed in the word cats. and that goes to a particular program. What is the name of the program? Well, you can just about see it here. Search might be a bit small, but you can see it. On the Bing server, there's a program called Search, which received the data that I gave it. What data? I typed in the word cat in a form, and then it got sent to it. And you can see it right here, Q equals cats. It's a little bit small, but it's there, Q equals cats. Q means query, right? The query that you have is cats. Give me lots of web pages all about cats. And there's some other things as well. I didn't type those in, but they're just kind of added by Bing. The ones we're interested in is the first part right here. Okay, that is the get method. So I sent data from a form, I pressed enter, it was given to the Bing server, and that was using the get method. Whenever you use the get method, you can see exactly what you type. You can see it. And that's an example. Any problem with that? Well, usually there's no problem seeing it. In fact, it's quite helpful. If you're building a system and you've got a browser, you've got a web page, you've got a server program, it makes a lot of sense to use the get method because you can see exactly what's happening. Okay, that's the get method. Let's go back to our presentation and look at the alternative. Okay, so we had a quick discussion of the get method by using bing.com. Let's now go and have a quick look at the post method. As I mentioned, project you're developing, get method, very useful. You can see things. You can see things in the URL. URL means that kind of big web page link thing, okay? However, you can't keep any secrets, and I'll have an example of that in a minute. All right. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, the get method is only for a few hundred letters or characters. If you type a huge book and you try to send it to a server, it's not going to work. This can only work for a few hundred letters or characters that you type. You want a huge book, you want to send that to the server, you've got to go to the second type. You've got to go to the post method. All right. Post method, you can send huge files. You can send videos, images, all of that kind of stuff if you just say method is post. Also, better for keeping secrets. Why? Because none of that data is shown in the URL at the top. None of it. None of the things you do using the post method is shown. It's kind of secret. Right. So let's think a bit more detail. What can we put in our form? Because we've talked about all the kind of high-level details. Let's see some exact example. So, very simple form here, simple paragraph. You can put any of these things inside a form, paragraph, divs, header 1, header 2, all of those stuff, no problem, mix it all together. Now, this is the thing which we're focusing on, text area. Okay, so you have to say start text area, end text area. Maybe you say how many rows, how many columns, and you give it a name, and we need that name. So the name is passed to the server program. And then the server program says, oh, right, yes, they typed this, and that was the feedback. So we've got to give it a name. Let's see what it looks like. Looks like this, right? This is some default text, which I told it to do. Where did I tell it to do it? Here. This is the default text. But I could delete it if I want and press a submit button, which I haven't added yet, and it will get sent to the server. So this is a text box, very simple stuff. Type stuff in, whatever you like. You know, I could delete the stuff that's already there. You can say, hi, I am Dave, whatever you like, you know, whatever, la, la, la. All right. And whatever you type will get sent to the server when you press submit. So let's add a submit button. It's the obvious thing that's missing. So let's go to our next slide. And we've made the example much more realistic. There's our text area from the last slide. There's our submit button, okay, because we've got to send it. So have to have a button. And also I filled in some of these essential parameters. What type of method? Well, we're going to use get method because it's great for getting started. And where's it going? It's going to a particular program I have on my server. All right. This is a real location. There's a server, subdirectory, and then there's a particular program written in the PHP language. Doesn't really matter what language it's written in, but it knows how to receive data from a form, and then it will do something with the data. Okay, so it's a real world example, and let's open that and try it out. Okay, so it's exactly the same as before, text box, and this time we've added a send button. All right, so whatever text I put in here is going to get sent to the server. Let's quickly throw in a few things. All right, there's a few things just so we can see it when we look at the server result. And I'm going to hit send. And what happens? It just looks kind of crazy and horrible and nasty. No mistake, it has totally worked correctly. So I typed in some text and that text got sent to the server, okay? I told my program on the server to take any data it receives and then show it on the screen. In fact, I told my little program on the server, which was a PHP program, I said, display every single piece of information you know about, because that's helpful for learning. So that little program on the server, it has received the data from the form and it's printed out every single bit of information it knows. I'm going to make this bigger and so we can zoom in on one part. So zoom, zoom, zoom. All right, so this is all the data from my particular server program, and lots of data, and I don't really need all of this data. The bit that I do need is the information which was sent to it. Where's the information sent to it? And here we can see it, okay? You can see it in request URI. Request URI has the data, 1, 2, 3, that's what I typed in. I typed in 1, 2, 3, I pressed submit, it got given to the server program, and then I told my little server program to display all the knowledge it has. A lot of the knowledge is rubbish, but the stuff we are interested in is the thing that I typed in, 1, 2, 3. It has received it, and also it printed it, and back that comes to the browser, all right? So I have got the data over on my server. In fact, I've got it in 2 different pieces of data. One is this one, your request URI. It has the things I typed in. And there's also one here, query string, 1, 2, 3. That's the same thing. That's what I typed in. So it actually is in 2 different variables on the server program. Now, the server program, we're not going to look at it in detail right now. Come back to that later in some other videos. So that's the end of our presentation, and we'll finish there for this introduction to HTML forms.